Coogs House. The Houston Cougars suddenly find themselves with a whole lot to play for this season in the Big 12 title race, but none of that matters if they don't win this Saturday.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Coogs your first listen of the day. Appreciate you making your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Coogs. When you're in the conversation and you don't know what to say, tell in the comments down below when it comes to candy, as it is Halloween time. Are you more of a sweet and soury kind of candy person, a chocolate person? What are you looking forward to getting? Obviously, maybe getting out of your kids' bags this trick-or-treat season. Today's show is brought to you by Mazda. When Mazda moves, you move, all moving forward in the right direction. More on that fun later. But I do want to talk about a set of keys to victory for Houston this Saturday. Some of the biggest matchups this weekend in the second segment, and then obviously the stakes of this as well in the third and final segment, because Houston finds themselves in a big time matchup that they ought to win Saturday morning, 11 a.m. Central Time, against West Virginia. The Mountaineers have had a rough year, to the very, very least. As far as the keys to victory for Houston go, look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you West Virginia's got some big, dark horse under whatever. Houston's going to do this game. Either they're going to win this game or they're going to beat themselves this game. It's going to be about what Houston does to Houston. I think the biggest way to make Houston make sure they come out on top in this one is that they establish the run early and often. That's the first key to victory, as I've got it in all of their losses. And West Virginia's got a lot of them thus far this season. West Virginia's allowed over 170 yards rushing per game and 4.25, 4.25 yards per carry. Houston, including their single loss this season, just on the season as a whole, is averaging 171 yards rushing per game and 4.1 yards per carry. So those numbers on their own basically match up. Houston checks their marks. West Virginia has had trouble winning those kinds of games. Now, that also, I think, undersells the physicality that brings. We know Houston's kind of calling card this season with Willie Fritz has been to be a very physical team. They're not a team that puts up 50 points. I think there's some people that don't like the offense for that reasons. I certainly see them in my comments every day talking about how they don't like the offense for those reasons. And that's fine. I think we think of Houston as being the Greg Ward, the Case Keenums, Kevin Cobb, or go back to Andre Ware. People putting up 90 points in games, right? This is never going to be that team, but this is a team that sits here at 7-1 in the Big 12, right? And I think that's because of the physicality they bring. Establishing the run early is going to be important. It also, for its worth, has kind of made Weigman a better football player. 4 different games, he's had 10 rushing attempts or more. Obviously, the outlier of all of it is that he had 21 rushing attempts last week against Arizona State. However, I do think it's worth pointing out that when he runs more than 10 times in a game, Houston is 4-0. And that signifies or indicates that they need him to get going with his legs to open up other things. I'd also point out that schematically, most of the time when you're preparing for a run-heavy offense, in terms of numbers, the reason the option game has been such a big deal in the spread option stuff the last 25 years, or the triple option, the veer, shout out to Houston Veer. Before that, different, right? But the option stuff from the shotgun has been so impactful because you're changing the math on the inside. You're changing the count as far as who they have to account for as a block or whatnot, right? If your quarterback can run the football. I would also point out that the most quarterback run play for Houston has been a version of quarterback power, either a quarterback power read or just a quarterback power straight up. And there's something not quantifiable about going through with a power type of system, obviously, and just pulling that extra guard around and getting downhill on stuff. I think that it frankly is kind of the same the way Slay and Eagles run that offense is emblematic of the same kind of physicality we talk about Willie Fritz having. The other thing I think that Houston's got to do in this game, though, besides just establish the run, is they've got to make freshman Scotty Fox throw the football. Side note, I think he'd be better if his name were just Scott Fox. I don't know why. I can't put my finger on it, but Scott Fox is a better quarterback than Scotty Fox, and I will die on that hill. But Scotty Fox is a guy that you have to look. Houston's shown the ability to get after the quarterback on passing downs. If they can make Scotty Fox a passer, he is still a freshman, and he is the kind of guy that he could give the ball away. He had a really good week against TCU last week. I don't act like he's got no talent. He's a talented quarterback, right? However, he's also a guy that started off the season fourth string. He's a guy that's playing high school football a year ago, and if that Houston pressure can get after him a little bit and kind of ruffle his feathers, I think they're in good shape defensively. The way you do that is you play solid football on first and second down, make it 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 11 or 12 would be great, and make them throw the thing around a little bit on those passing kind of downs. Now, Cam Vaughn is really good, and so I don't want to say this as a blanket statement about all receivers at West Virginia, but the guys they've got healthy enough to play right now at West Virginia outside of Cam Vaughn kind of have trouble separating from defensive backs. And with Houston's defensive backs, if those guys are too close together, the Houston DBs and the West Virginia wide receivers, I think you're going to see a handful of interception, tip balls, batted balls, those kinds of, squeezing into a tight window decisions from quarterback Scotty Fox to someone like Cam Vaughn could end up becoming a pick for Houston in a lot of ways. The other and final key to victory I have for Houston is DYJ. Do your job. This is the first home game for Houston after KURT HESTER passed away. For the folks who maybe knew the program or West Virginia folks that tuned over or whatever, the quickest version of the story is last February, KURT HESTER, a strength coach at Houston, was given a couple weeks to live, stage 4 melanoma. He famously fought it with the slogan #unbreakable, but really talked a lot about taking death to triple overtime. He did addressed the team last Thursday after being told to just go home and get comfortable because it was probably running its course. He talked to the team last Thursday before Arizona State game. He passed away Saturday morning before the Arizona State game, and the players played a phenomenal game, and everyone was very quick to point out that was a game in his honor after the fact. This game being a home game, I think, is going to draw different emotions, right? The crowd's going to be feeding into it some as well. You're wearing the blackout jersey, etc. And the Blackout jerseys, again, were Hester's favorite. I think all of that, though, points to there's a chance for those high emotions in this game. It would be very natural. There's also high emotions because there's just kind of a national buzz coming off Houston off of last week. You're in the AP top 25 for the first time in a couple years. First time under Willie Fritz, you've been in the top AP top 25. You beat a team that was in the top 25 on the road last week as well. National buzz talking about, okay, can 11-1 Houston make a trip to Arlington for the Big 12 title? Can you do all those kinds of things? All those emotions, I think, would make it very natural for a college football team of any caliber to have guys trying to do everything on one play, right? Or score all of your points on one drive, or be frustrated when you don't have a touchdown by the fourth or fifth play of a drive, or to try and take the deep shot instead of the simple open throws, or to try and make a pick six instead of a catch tackle that's short of the first down marker, or whatever the different things are. If Houston just does their own job, DYJ, do your job, right? And do your job very well, efficiently, and effectively, I think they're okay. It's when those other things start to creep in and you get out of yourself, that's when I think you really see Houston potentially have more of a problem. I don't think that's happened this week. And frankly, I think it's a testament to Coach Fritz, the culture that also involved Coach Hester, when we're talking about him. All of that put together, I think, makes this kind of game where that doesn't necessarily happen. I do think, though, that if Houston is upset in this game, and we're talking in a sad tone Saturday afternoon in the post-game conversation, it will be because they made mistakes like taking unnecessary deep shots, throwing into traffic, or missing a tackle because you went for the pick, or those kinds of plays. And I guess that's the second time I used both those examples in a row. But those going for too much instead of just taking what's there kind of plays, I think would ultimately be how that kind of a thing happens. And I think in this particular game, it would be natural for those kinds of things to kick in. That would be my fear. So contrary to that, I would say, to counter that fear, do your job. Now, there are some matchups in this game that could help decide it as well. Could decide it early, frankly, depending on how these matchups go, individuals versus individuals. I want to get into that in just 1 second. But first, today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at Mazda. Now, Mazda's been moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the games, but redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board, that move crowds, move culture, and keep the game moving forward. Obviously, moving to move the game forward last weekend is Connor Weigman and those legs. We mentioned he had 21 carries last Saturday. He really legitimately put the team on his back in so many ways. While some people, I think, were a little worried about running your quarterback 21 times, it felt like he actually got energized the dirtier his jersey got over the course of the game. Shouts to Connor Weigman and the offensive line, frankly, for putting him for so many positive games in that one. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Park Rangers locked on Coogs here. Big matchups in deciding the game this weekend. I think really this is the kind of game where Houston's just got to make sure everyone wins their correct matchup. And the first matchup I think that has to happen actually is quarterback Connor Weigman has to win his matchup with defensive coordinator Zach Alley at West Virginia. Right now, Connor has shown that he's a true dual threat quarterback this year in a way that I think people had kind of, outside of Martin Marikin, shouts to Martin, I think other people had kind of forgotten that he had that element to his game coming into this season because he hadn't gotten to show it off a whole lot, right? And he's playing like an ultimate tough guy, and he's really running through stuff and all of that, right? Zach Alley and West Virginia's defense had a stretch of 3 straight games this year against mobile quarterbacks. They had Kansas and Jalen Daniels, Utah and Devin Dampier, and BYU and Bear Bachmeier. In those 3 games, West Virginia gave up 41, 48, and 38 points, respectively. Right? That to me indicates that if Houston and Connor Weigman have a game plan to get him loose, West Virginia is going to be in trouble. Now, we get a little bit into the more, still at the raw stats, but just into the stats in those games. Jalen Daniels has had 5 carries for 69 yards. Devin Dampier had 11 carries for 33 yards, but had a touchdown. And Bear Bachmeier had 12 carries for 43 yards and a touchdown. Well, Jalen Daniels found some wiggle room. He didn't then need to throw it a whole lot, right? He found his way to 140 yards, but they had more success running the football as Kansas did. And selling out to stop Dampier from running the football at Utah and Bear Bachmeier at BYU, West Virginia gave up 230 and 350 yards through the air in those 2 football games, respectively. And so they sold out to stop what Dampier and Bachmeier were known for and opened up the floodgates in other parts of the football field. If Connor Weigman can do the same kinds of things and take the same kinds of advantages, I don't see why you couldn't see Houston really pile it on in one area or the other. I'd imagine most defensive coordinators want to stop the run first, and so you could see more of loading up the box and all that kind of stuff. TCU last week, different quarterback situation with Hoover, obviously, but was able to like create advantages in the box with extra tight ends and H-back type guys, those size bodies. We've seen Houston under Slade Nagel pull in Tanner Koziel, 2 backs, et cetera, to all kind of get those different things going. Frankly, on the passing front, Utah, once they load up the box, is able to kind of sit back and pick apart the zone behind it pretty easily. And it feels like all of that actually could potentially play in Houston's favor if they have a good game plan for it. And if Connor Weigman can make those quick decisions in RPO situations, in make the call at the line situations that put Zach Alley's defense in a bind, right? Now, West Virginia is also, this is very unofficial stat keeping by me and watching them online this week because I hadn't watched Virginia a whole lot before this week, and I don't know if I'm going to watch them ever again. But this week I watched a handful of West Virginia games, and it seems like to me they unofficially lose like an important touchdown or jump ball play every game. I'm here to tell you Houston's going to win one of those, right? And it's going to be one of those things where they send a blitz, Weigman throws it up to Tanner Koziel, Amari Thomas, somebody, and they will just come down with it, right? Maybe it's Harvey Broussard, maybe someone new, but I think in a Hooper's hoop kind of moment, you're going to have a 50-50 ball that Houston wins because I feel like in important spots, often early, admittedly, in the football game. West Virginia has lost one of those every single game. So Connor Weigman taking advantage of the defense, taking what it gives him. If they want to load up and stop the quarterback run, going through the air. If they can't stop the quarterback run, taking advantage there will be important. Landon Livingston, the center at West Virginia versus Carlos Allen, is my first player versus player matchup in this one. And look, last week, the week before that, we've seen what Khalil Afau and Eddie Wallace have been able to do, excelling really at different parts of the defensive line spots, right? And that's in no small part due to Carlos Allen demanding help and double teams. Carlos Allen is looking like a pro, and I know it didn't always show up in the stat sheet, although some games early in the season it was also in the stat sheet. Carlos Allen has had really, really impactful games. It feels like every week. Now, I would also say that West Virginia is going to be starting a new guard at I believe it'll be the left guard spot. I should say Kim McAneal. Kim McAneal is going to be out for this game. He was their starting left guard. That's typically a spot you see Carlos Allen take control of. They'll have a backup there. If Landon Livingston has to come over to help double team and Carlos Allen still wins those matchups, they're going to start breaking even more rules to cover up what Carlos Allen's doing. That would open up a lot of other stuff in Houston defensive fronts. Immediately, I think that's how you get to like an Eddie Walls kind of game. That's certainly one of the factors in Eddie Walls' big game last week is when he got one-on-one matchups, he won them, right? Getting one-on-one matchups in this one would be because someone like Carlos Allen is taking advantage of his, right? Now, I think that you know the other part of this too is we talked in the first segment about like Houston needs to make sure they get Scotty Fox into passing downs here. Now, I think that passing downs are obviously important for any defense to get passing down to make them one-dimensional, all of that. In this matchup specifically, in the Big 12, Houston is fourth in sacks per game as a defense. West Virginia is 15th out of the 16 Big 12 teams in sacks allowed per game. You could see everyone get one if they can really force those because West Virginia has a banged up offensive line, and even when those guys were healthy, had trouble keeping people off the quarterback. That's why they have so many quarterbacks on the injury report right now, right? Speaking of the injury report, you point out here, it's worth noting that Houston's Jason Brooks has moved from doubtful to questionable. He and Stacey Sneed both sit there. You'll notice there's a lot of West Virginia names on that side, which has been the case for them all year, right? Sometimes you're just snake bitten in that way, of course, the year. With all those snake-bitten defensive backs on the injury report, as it flashes on the video screen for the audio audience, it's also available online and everywhere. But you'll notice a handful of DBs for West Virginia being down. Jason Chambers is their best healthy defensive back. I think who wins one-on-one matchups between he and Amari Thomas is going to be really, really important. I think Chambers is their best defensive back. And with the exception of the TCU game, he really changed sides of the field based on formation personnel. It's going to be a little bit different every week, but he would go back and forth. TCU did not, so maybe they're getting away from that. But if he follows Amari Thomas, so to speak, I think Amari wins that matchup. Houston wins this ball game, right? Part of me wanted to say, it'd come down to if Harvey Broussard won his matchup with his DB, because Houston is undefeated in games where Harvey Broussard catches a football. But I think it's really going to be more about the Amari Thomas, Jason Chambers kind of moments, the back shoulder chemistry kind of stuff that Amari Thomas can do. Look, Chambers is fine. He's probably the best healthy defensive player at West Virginia. But if Amari Thomas can win those matchups, I don't know who can cover anyone else because they're going to start spinning over to cover him. Tanner Cozy will be open because they have a 5'9" nickel. I think that suddenly it's like, wait a second, who can really cover any of this up, right? Now, all that is to say that you get to that passing game once you've established the running game and made them get out of dropping 8, right, and all that kind of stuff. So these things do stair step off of one another and ultimately could lead to a big time win for the Houston Cougars. And I do think Houston wins this ball game. Houston, as we record this, is favored by 13.5 points at our buddies over at FanDuel. And I think that, frankly, Houston might break that as well. I think that Willie Fritz and the culture have established a program that you've seen, frankly, exceed expectations in some of these games. Obviously, like Oregon State being a little bit different early in the season, but they have shown up and like they put up and beat the spread against Oklahoma State right this year in those kinds of games. I also think, for what it's worth, that when adverse moments hit, this version of Houston Cougar football has proven to work past them and be better because of them. Let's be honest, the last 7 days with the KURT Hester news has provided its own adversity. And I think that it's a kind of adversity that, because of guys like Hester, they'll be able to work through and be better because of. But it doesn't mean it wasn't adverse throughout the week. Now, I want to talk about what's at stake for Houston as they look to win this football game on Saturday and what could be on their horizon. And we've talked some of it all week, obviously. Before we get to any of that, I do want to talk about today's show brought to you by our buddies over at DoorDash, because it is almost the weekend. Tomorrow is Saturday, folks, and time to look back at last week's MVP, who delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks. Save more on every time you order. These players deliver when it matters most. If we break it down, I have been going kind of Weigman a lot for these, but I want to go to Eddie Walls this time, actually. Eddie Walls delivered a big way. 3 sacks, count them 3. 1, 2, 3 sacks in the football game against Arizona State last weekend. He came through, no hesitation, none of that. If you've been watching week after week, he's been playing really well in the run game, actually, even though he came in as a pass rusher, and that it was not a fluke. He was due for a big time performance at some point this season. And just like Eddie Walls delivered for the Coogs last week, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You can save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you can save about $250, including $100 back in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash Streaks. Terms apply. The promo goes through November 18th. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, because NBA is back and there's no better place to get on the action than with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. It is that equinox time. You got the NBA, you got the World Series, you got hockey, you got pro football, you got college football. College basketball starts Monday. The action feels like it just cannot stop. But when you want to get even more in on the action, get in on the start of a game, ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It gets more exciting every game, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers, $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. So at FanDuel.com, it's time to play your game with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Parker Haynes with Locked on Cougs here. And I said, as we left the last segment, that I do think Houston's going to win this football game. But I want to point out a couple things here. And one of those is, this is a big deal of football game, even if your opponent is having a rough year. Look, one kind of side story to this whole weekend for Houston is that ESPN is cutting their coverage, or is some dispute with YouTube TV, which is one of the larger platforms to watch television for sports fans, right? I'm not going to get into every single number, but what that does mean is that there will be a large number of people that have not put on ESPN all week that will turn on ESPN on Saturday morning to watch college football. And at that first window, noon Eastern, 11 Central time, they will not have ESPN because they do not realize what's going on. And the natural inclination is to go, well, then what other college football game is on? Houston has gone FS1 at 11 o'clock Central time, and that time slot, that very first window. And if you don't think that means there will be, if you don't think that will impact how many eyes are on the screen, I think you're being a little crazy. Without ESPN to watch for so many people, FS1 is going to draw more eyes. You're going to have more people watching the Houston Cougars. I do think it's worth pointing that out, when so much between AP votes, coaches' votes, the folks sit around and make college football playoff picks, all those people are people. Being in the conversation matters. You also, for what it's worth, that's a national game. You don't get a whole lot of those as Houston in a year. You got to take advantage. It's also, if we're thinking about things that are happening, as we mentioned throughout the episode, going to be an emotional day. The 2015 Houston Cougars kind of reliving their Peach Bowl reunion tour. Tom Herman will be on the field celebrating that, which will bring out mixed emotions from a large number of the crowd. I understand. It's also a chance to show the world that you're a different program than years past, though, and not necessarily from years past like Tom Herman's past. However, uh, iterations between Tom Herman and now of this program, we'll put it that way, would have absolutely lost this game. And those iterations of the program would have been coming out of a big win last week, had the emotional, tumultuous week that was. You get ranked, you get full of yourself, you get, high on your own supply, whatever, and suddenly you end up this weekend and you lay an egg. And I want to stress that I don't think Fritz and this program are in that place anymore. I don't mean that in a way that's detrimental to the current iteration of the program. I will say that this is a chance to show that you are no longer that program to a lot of people that think you're still that program. There's a lot of people that don't know what the new Houston looks like. That, yeah, they might have seen clips from Arizona State, but they also saw clips from when you lost to Tech, and that's basically all they've seen this year. Or maybe they saw a score and they woke up on Saturday morning because you beat Oregon State on a Friday night, or what they saw the Dean Connors catch at Oklahoma State. They've seen small snippets or whatever. This is a chance to show the world who you are and that you can get through that week. You're a better team for it, right? It also a chance to show that you're better than you were earlier this year. Look, let's face it, you didn't exactly run away when you were a big time favorite at Oregon State. You held serve and did all right against when you were at Oklahoma State, when you were also a favorite. But you're trying to show that you're a better team now to the world and all those people, those qualitative kind of pickers, trying to show that you're a better team now than you were in August and September. As we enter November, Houston Cougar football needs to be showing that's progressing and moving forward in the world. And with all the conversation all week between PFF podcast, ESPN talk, Big 12 podcast, this podcast, Locked On Big 12, the Squad Show, everyone's talking about how mathematically Houston can still make it to Arlington. And in terms of winning and losing odds, they are favored. They are the favorites in every week this season, probably the rest of the way. And that is all a bunch of noise that, while it is in the background, is very much present in the conversations around this football program. Now, I don't think it's happening in the locker room in there. I think that's something that Willie Fritz has done a great job of making we got to go 1-0 this week kind of locker room. But I think that that's happening all over town. I think it's happening all over the state and Big 12 country at large. And I think that frankly, this weekend serves as a chance to block out that noise one more time. Look, I know they won last week for Coach Hester. I do. I think that however spiritual you are or whatever you want to put on it, that did help, I think, Houston last week. Right. I do also think, as I subtly mentioned earlier, there is a difference when you're at home and playing in a game where his name will be everywhere. Hashtag unbreakable will be everywhere. The reminders will be abundant. Literally, the jersey they're wearing, they changed theme weeks to put the Blackout game this week because it was KURT Hester's favorite jersey that Houston had, right? And I think that it's going to be different because of all of that. It's going to be much more front of mind. It's going to be, frankly, much more emotional in some ways because of that. There will be a tribute that will be tear jerky. It just will be, if I'm being honest, and I'm trying not to get too emotional, but like the video that the program put out in the cinematic win video after they beat Arizona State with Unbreakable at the end was emotional and did jerk a lot of tears. It's going to be that kind of a day. And I think that showing you can win in those moments as a football program for Coach Hester, for the program, for all of it, is a chance to take a gigantic step. And I don't want to make light of that. I don't want to minimize that step. And I don't want to act like it's not there. Now, I think they do it. I don't really have a lot of like questions in my head about if Houston can do it or if Houston should do it. And Houston's done what they should do most of the season. But you got to do it one more time. You got to do it one more time for that, and one more time for that, one more time for that, and so on. And so here's to another one of those. Here's to being hashtag unbreakable this Saturday. Head out to the stadium. Kickoff's at 11 o'clock. Grab some breakfast tacos. It's going to be a beautiful weather day. Warmer in Houston than it is in West Virginia by a considerable amount, but very, very nice when it's been so hot this football season. So make sure you grab a couple tickets and head on down to go cheer on the Coogs. Locked on Coogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. If you're looking for a second listen of the day, I want to recommend the Locked On Big 12. Drake Tolson doing a great job talking about the conference as a whole. And can we get 3 teams in the playoff this college football playoff season? And can one of those be Houston, frankly, is a constant conversation. With basketball tipping off Monday, you want to hit subscribe because we've been breaking down all things basketball as well. We got Lehigh's Monday night. We've got Auburn very soon. Things are heating up on the basketball front. Football season's in full swing. It is chaos and so many things to talk about here. So stay tuned and say, also some 5-star recruits were here last weekend. I don't know if you heard about them. Kind of a big deal. Subscribe, hit the bell, go live. Locked On Coogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every single day. Go Cougs.